All right, so let's take a look at comparing fractions using a benchmark. We're going to use that benchmark 1/2 again. And the fractions I'm going to give you, let me use my drawing tool. Okay, so the fractions I'm going to give you are 2/5 and 5/8. Okay, now you're going to notice that neither of these say a half like our the previous video that I recorded for you. Instead, these have these are fractions. Instead of using a half, we're still going to use a half as a benchmark to help us compare them. So I'm going to focus on the first fraction. The first fraction is 2/5. Now I need to look at the denominator to determine if I'm going to compare to a half. I got to understand, well, what is half of that fraction? Okay, so I got to look at the denominator 5. 5 is the total amount of parts in that whole. So 5 is an odd number. It is a little bit harder for us to determine what is half of 5. Some of you may know that right off the top of your head. Some of you may not realize what is half of 5. So what I'm going to do is over here, I'm going to draw 5 tally marks, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to split those. This group, this group. So each group so far has 2. Now I have 1 tally mark left over. So what I have to do is I have to split that tally mark in half. This group gets a half, that group gets a half. So really 2.5 is half of 5. So let's go back over to that fraction and let's look at this fraction. So your denominator is 5. What is half of 5? Okay, we discovered that 2.5 is half of 5. So now we got to look at our numerator and we got to compare that to that 2.5. Is this 2 greater than 2.5 or less than 2.5? If you said less, you are correct. This 2 is less than 2.5. So this 2/5 is less than a half, because remember, half of 5 is 2.5. So we are going to put that this is less than 1/2. Okay, let's take a look at the next fraction. All right, we need to compare that to a half. Then maybe we can go in and we can compare these two fractions. So this fraction says 5/8. We're going to focus on our denominator 8. Okay, 8's a little bit easier to work with because it's an even number. So take 8 and split it down the middle, and what do you get? Everybody should know this. 8 split it in half, you get 4. Okay, so then you got to ask yourself, go look at that numerator and see, is that numerator greater than 4, which was a half, or is it less than 4? And if you said greater, you are correct. So 5 is greater than 4. 5 is greater than half of the denominator. So this is greater than 1/2, okay? Now, using that benchmark fraction, that's all we did. We labeled this. We knew that one fraction's less than a half, that's the 2/5, and then we know that 5/8 is greater than a half. So now we can take these two fractions and we can compare. Well, if we know that 2/5 is less than a half, 5/8 is greater than a half, we could even put that on a number line and we could see that, I'm just going to draw a quick number line. This represents a half. Okay, we said that 2/5 is less, so we're going to see 2/5 over here. Oops. 2/5 over here. We know that 5/8 is greater, so we're going to see 5/8 on this side. Okay, well, so what can we say about 2/5 compared to 5/8? Okay, looking at the number line, I know it's very messy, but looking at my number line, you can see that the 2/5 is less than the 5/8. Okay, you notice that I did not use my tools down here to discover how to compare. Instead, I used my knowledge of knowing what is half, okay? So this is what I want you to focus on today, is using that half benchmark, not the models, not drawing a model. Instead, I want you to use that half benchmark and really focus on that half and understanding what does it mean if I'm using a half benchmark to compare, okay? Good luck with your work today.